MaxMe at TheInformer. Today we're joined by Josie, really special guest. As I've said to you in the past, I look to bring the stories from people out there who are truly wonderful and who are themselves really agitating to create the world that certainly MaxMe is in the business of creating. And so, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Josie. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for joining, Josie. To be honest, we came into each other's lives quite unexpectedly.
Yes.
We were literally standing next to one another and we sparked up a conversation, and I just couldn't walk away from the fact that you've got this amazing story to tell. So I might open by just asking, maybe tell us a bit about yourself. What do you do? You know, something like that.
So I'm a freelance graphic designer, and I've been a freelance graphic designer for 11 years. And prior to that, I was an accessory designer. So I did study business marketing and then went on to study design, and I worked part-time in retail for Surf, Dive and Ski in the city.
Oh, cool store.
I know. It was a great time, a great era, and great people too. And yeah, so I did my accessories. In my final year of business marketing, I actually took a direct marketing plan and applied that to a business, and then that went on to have me travel the world and meet my son's father and yeah, create beautiful products and
a beautiful son.
And a beautiful son.
We'll talk about your son in a moment, because some of the things you talked to me about how you've parented him really struck me. But before we do that,
yep.
You've been awarded Australian of the Year. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so that's to be awarded an Australian of the Year award, you need to be nominated. So it's not something that you can go for. It's something that people put you forward for, which is a really generous thing. I think that people who nominate people are just amazing people themselves.
Good humans.
Yeah, because I suppose they recognise the efforts that you go to. So I was the local hero recipient for Australian of the Year for Victoria in 2020, alongside many other wonderful people, and it was such a fantastic experience because it was for the 60th anniversary of Australian of the Year.
Huge.
Yeah, so we got to meet some pretty amazing people, and then to realise that you're therefore then in that alumni, and so you have access to all of those people should you want to pursue avenues. It's actually quite an interesting organisation and process, and
what did you win it for? Tell us. Share. Because it's an incredible reason.
Yeah, I received it because I demonstrated the collection of 5.6 tonnes of litter from the foreshores around Port Phillip Bay, and I also run a campaign called The Only Butt. So the Only Butt campaign is a litter campaign for cigarette butts. So annually in Australia, 8 billion cigarettes are littered, and unfortunately people aren't aware that cigarette butts are plastic, so they're the number one littered item. So when we look at litter, cigarette butts make up for 50% of that litter found, which is pretty crazy.
But how did you get into that? Like, what made you collect over 5 tonnes of rubbish?
Well, I actually lived in Polynesia, and there used to be an ad on TV, a Cussons Imperial Leather ad, which most people know of, and it used to say, "Oh, James, I think Tahiti looks nice," and he'd say, "Simon, Tahiti." And so when I went there, I was actually quite shocked. I was really surprised at the behaviour, and in saying that, I can't judge the culture, because one of the things that I always enjoyed in travelling was appreciating the differences in culture. People used to say to me, "What's your favourite country?" And I'd say all of them, because they all had something unique. And I suppose living in that environment made me realise, because it was such a micro environment, I realised, wow, all of those things that these people are choosing, we're choosing the same things, but we're not seeing the same effect, because you really basically only have one road. I mean, you have inroads, but you know, with big gutters that are taller than people, and people were just throwing their rubbish in there, and then when it would rain, it would just go out to the sea. And so I suppose I started picking up litter there, and then I came back to Australia and I lived inland.
But you didn't have to do it, did you, Josie? You just chose to do it.
Yeah, I chose to do it because I think through graphic design and through building catalogues, you know, if you go to take a photo, you're often picking that piece of beauty, but all around it could be horrible. And so I think I just made a choice to make a difference. I couldn't, in my mind, I thought, looking forward, if somebody said to me, my generation never did anything, I could say, well, I tried, you know?
And you didn't come, you know, a lot of people talk about choosing to make a difference from a position of privilege. You wouldn't describe yourself as a person that's come from privilege, would you, Josie?
No, I didn't come from privilege.
But yet you've chosen to make a difference.
Yeah, I chose to make a difference because I want, if I'm going to leave the world, I want to know that I don't have regrets, you know. And I think that as you get older, you realise that it's not what you do, it's what you didn't do. And I hear that a lot at the moment, you know, that you regret the things that you didn't do. And I think sometimes the society sets us up to be so perfect that that's why people don't reach out and try and fail or try and make a difference, because that fear of failing
and not being perfect.
Yeah, and not being perfect.
I want to shift just quickly to talk about your beautiful son, because something
Yes.
you said to me about the way you parent him, it just blew me away. Could you tell me about you mentioned that your son, you sort of sparked his possibility through these 3 lenses you told him he needed to sort of live his life. What were they?
Yeah, so I have those 3 lenses for my son, but I suppose I need to explain why I have those 3 lenses, and that is that I did move to Tahiti and I did give birth to my son, and unfortunately my son's father had a drug problem, and I think once you become a mum, your priorities change, and I realised there and then that I needed to be strong and make a difference for my son, and that I needed to make a choice to not have that life as part of my life. And it was a very difficult situation because I actually had to flee from Polynesia, and then when I got back to Australia I had 8 months of court, and unfortunately my son's father lied and said I kidnapped my son. So The Hague was engaged and my son was sent back, and obviously I wasn't going to go without him. And then I spent the following year fighting in a foreign country for the custody of my son, and I had so many instances that I could elaborate on. I don't have any bad feelings towards my son's father because I was fortunate enough to do Al-Anon, which is for friends and family of drug and alcohol abuse. And so I understand that there's the person that I love, but I don't love the behaviour.
Right.
And so by going through that process, I wondered how I could raise my son in the best possible way. And finally, we were escorted by 8 frontier police and boarded on a flight with no passport for my son and returned to Australia thanks to DFAT. And later, there's been a documentary made about that journey. And these things are not things that I've looked for, but things that have happened. And I think it's down to the choice of how to digest that experience. You know, I could choose to be angry, bitter, and yes, I've had those things, but I've chosen to deal with those things. I've chosen to face those shortcomings. You know, we all have shortcomings.
We do.
And when we admit those, so what I decided was, I'm going to give my son 3 goals, and they are, because he's very handsome. His father is handsome. He probably, if he heard this, he'd be like, yes, of course I am. But they're a very good-looking family. So I decided the 3 goals would be for my son to be handsome from the inside, because we all know as women that there's nothing worse than a handsome man on the outside and he's not handsome on the inside.
There's plenty of them, unfortunately, yeah.
To be wise and to be confident, because I figured that if he had those 3 goals, then happiness, joy, friendship, peace, harmony, all of those things would be added to his life. So as a mum, when I've raised him, I've said to him, and he does something, I say, "Is that wise?" And then he's like, "Ah."
You got me on that one, Mum.
Yeah, so that it actually has been a really fantastic parenting tool that I devised because I needed to simplify the way that I could express my moral standards as raising someone who's a valuable member of the community. Because really, as parents, that's what we're doing. We're raising valuable members of the community, and I want to be able to give the best to my son, and I don't have all the answers, so therefore I trust myself enough that I've raised him to be wise enough to make good choices based on those goals. I hope that makes sense.
Oh my God. Josie, I cannot express to you how much it means to me that you've spent this time with us, with the viewers. You shared with us an extraordinary story. You are an extraordinary woman, and I am excited to be able to stay in contact with you. I hope I can have you back on the show and to tell a bit more of your story. So thank you very, very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and congratulations on having such a wonderful show and wanting to make a difference for the future generation, because they do need us to communicate so that they can understand there's such a big changing, close, rapid environment that, you know, it does rely on us to share.
And step in and make a difference, which is what you do every day.
Yeah.
So thank you, Josie.
You're welcome.
Thank you, viewers. Another incredible show. Wow. I just feel so blessed to be able to bring the sorts of calibre of people that I'm able to sort of share their story with you. So catch you next time. Bye.